It's 5 minutes past 8 o'clock in the United Kingdom. It's 5 minutes past 11 o'clock in East Africa. That is Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania. And it is actually less than an hour with that in West Africa. Welcome to the global community conversation. This is Come. Let's talk with me, Kassim Kayira. And tonight, a very difficult subject. Oh, when don't we have difficult subjects? Tonight, we are talking about divorce and why it is the 1st of February. We have just completed January. Statistically, January is the month in which many divorces actually take place. And coming off festive season, many people having holidays, Christmas and New Year for the Christians especially, you would have thought that this is a time that probably you would be having peace in homes. Unsurprising, this is the time that you actually have the biggest number of divorce cases coming up. Lawyers have been busy and probably we shall be trying to interrogate that situation. But it is meant to be, especially, for example, in the Muslim faith, we marry whenever we meet, and that is actually universal. When the two parties come together, it is a social contract between two equal partners who come together in a relationship to enjoy, to continue fulfilling one another, to enhance one another. But when it gets to a point where this has failed, the point would have been, why didn't we start with a conversation on marriage and we have jumped very quickly to divorce? Quite often what happens is the reasons that lead us to divorce start way back, but actually you almost divorce the moment you marry, simply because there are particular things that are big differences that end up becoming a problem later on. In this conversation, it is an interactive program. If you've just joined us for the first time, remember, we share stories. We come and share experiences. Through these experiences, we enhance each other and try to see how we can overcome situations. All of us become experts in our own way because all of us have a particular story to tell. All we need to do is dig deep and find that particular story. And that is what we do on this particular program. So don't feel shy. If you're feeling shy, probably one way to help you get out of your shyness, get into the chat room, have a comment, and you'll see how a debate starts evolving out of that. But best way is to take the microphone and share your experiences. Tonight, we shall be looking at not only the secular style regarding with the situation with divorce, just from the normal life experiences that we are going to be sharing, but we shall also be listening to the religious connotations, the religious reasons for that. In Christianity, for example, when people get married, when they're tying the knot, the message is made very clearly that actually, what God has put together, no one should put asunder. And therefore, it is till death doth us part. But we have found situations where that actually has been put to the test. And what happens? What happens in these situations when we find ourselves in that particular situation? In Islam, the story is different. Although when people marry, they're actually meant to stick together, to be together, actually until death doth them part. However, if there are mitigating circumstances that make it untenable, when you have irreconcilable differences between the two parties, then it is only pertinent, it is only right that people should go their separate ways and find love elsewhere. It is amazing that just like we fall in love, we do fall out of love. And when that happens, that could be reason enough for people to break up. It may be that the reasons that you fell in love for no longer exist in a relationship, and therefore it becomes almost unbearable for you to continue to live in that particular relationship when the very things that took you into that relationship are no longer available. I'll just want us, as we do, as you call upon everybody else, your friends, please allow them, let them come and join the conversation, because it is these things that help us to enhance ourselves, to know probably where we went wrong. And our question tonight was, are you in a difficult situation where probably you're going through a divorce process? Might you want to share? Because sometimes a problem shared is a problem half solved. Because some things, sometimes many people actually go through a lot of stress resulting from divorce processes. It is never easy for anyone. It is not a time that one would say they are celebrating. Of course, once the divorce has gone through and each one has gone their separate ways, if you have been living in an abusive relationship, it might be a time when you can actually call that a celebration. But divorce, just like marriage, involves more than one person, not just the party. If there are children that have been the products of this particular relationship, you're talking about now, how are you going to handle children? A new term has actually come out tonight, very recently. It is called bad nesting. While we have been talking about shared responsibilities between the couple, those who have broken up, the husband and wife, ex-husband, ex-wife, now there is a new word that has come into the terminologies of divorce, which is bad nesting. And with bad nesting, what happens, actually, like as the word suggests, a couple has a house, so they have the main house. Normally, it would be the husband who gets out of this house and then leaves the wife there, especially if there's a case of, say, domestic violence involved and so on. But under bad nesting, what is happening now is that the two couples decide to leave their home. So the husband goes and gets a house, the wife goes and gets a house, and the children remain in this particular home, which has been the family home, to ensure that the children do not lose out on the benefits that they were enjoying, when the couple were existing. They have shared responsibility. So if it is the turn of the mother to deal with the children, the mother leaves her new accommodation to come to this house, which used to be the family house, to be able to deal with the children. When her turn runs out, she goes out, and then the husband, ex-husband, comes into the house, lives with the children in the same environment. And the idea is to try to make sure that the children do not miss out on their environment that they have grown to be accustomed to. Of course, that depends on what means you have. If you are poor and each one is going to be struggling with where to live, that might not be enough. But this is all just to suggest that a situation that has been calm, mutual, friendly, has suddenly ended up there. So as I get you just to get ready into the conversation, why don't we watch this TEDx of a professional marriage counselor, divorce lawyer, but also a person who has been through that particular situation, sharing her own experiences. Isma, if we can have that clip just to open us up. To remind you, we are live on 75 W Radio. We are live on Uma Connect on YouTube and on Zoom, where we're streaming live on YouTube at this particular moment in time. You can catch up anytime with this program. If you miss anything, just go online, look for Uma Connected, and just search for Come Let's Talk with Kassim Kayira. And as like we do, I can see Sheikh Sulaiman Tibuka is already joined us here in tonight's conversation, and we shall be looking at the religious perspectives. And we have a Christian perspective on that, because as you remember, this is a global community conversation where nobody's left out. Isma, let's have that clip to get us thinking through the issue, difficult subject of divorce. Just to let you know as well that tonight we are concentrating on why divorce. So it's not the nitty-gritty, it will be the second and third series, but in this particular one, we are going to concentrate on why divorce. What happens to lead you to a divorce? Do you think did you survive the divorce situation that now you've managed to outlive it, and therefore you can share that experience? You were about to break up, but we managed to pull it back. That would be an interesting story to hear tonight as well. Isma, with a clip.
Relationships end. No, really, think about it. Most relationships end. Even the ones that last for a really long time end. And not necessarily because somebody did something wrong. Dating relationships, work relationships, friendships, even family relationships aren't necessarily for life. When a marriage ends, we call it a divorce. And I know a lot about divorce. I've been a divorce lawyer for nearly 20 years. My parents introduced me to the topic at the age of 7. Right? And I've been divorced myself twice. I literally have hundreds of divorce stories. But the message I want to share with you today comes from my own personal experience with divorce. Just so you know, I'm actually not here to make a hero out of divorce. But it's not a villain either. You see, divorce is an opportunity It's an opportunity to create something new. The definition of divorce is really to separate or dissociate something from something else. And it's necessary to break a bond in order to create a new one. In much the same way, I'm looking for us to divorce the idea of the act of divorce from the individual who was divorced. Could it just be that my marriage ended and not that I'm a failure at marriage? Divorce is a result. It's a result of all of the actions that led up to it. And then it's the opportunity to create something new afterwards. So as you're listening to my stories, I want you to listen with an ear towards what were the actions that led up to this divorce and what were the opportunities created by it. Marriage number one. 3 years, no kids, right? I met my first husband when I was 19 years old. We dated long distance until a few months before we got married when I was 28. We had a beautiful long distance wedding in Jamaica. The theme was a destination wedding, right? And the theme was long distance. It was very fitting. 75 people came with us. It was all white on a private island. To date, the best party I've ever thrown. And really actually ever attended, but that's not what this is about. It was really a good party. And I was sure, because besides the fact that I was never going to be divorced, not like my parents, I had the makings of everything for a marriage that was going to stand the test of time. During the marriage, he actually still traveled for work, so it was still actually a long distance marriage. I spent a lot of time alone. I went to a lot of events unaccompanied. And I called myself single wife. In my mind, that was the best of both worlds. The issue is that in my mind is different from in reality. In my mind is a place I'd call fantasy land. And you guys know fantasy things. And anytime you're saying, I wish, I should, if only, any thoughts or ideas that suggest or imply something different from what's actually happening in reality, you're in fantasy. In my mind, I had a perfect marriage. In reality, I was married to a man who left me for his boyfriend. When he came to me and he said, I don't love you the way a husband should love a wife, and I don't know if I want to be married to you anymore. Divorce happened to me. It didn't matter that I didn't want it. It happened. And I call that experience shattering into reality. Now, let's be clear. The signs were there, okay? I told you he traveled for work. When he'd come home from traveling, I'd have dinner cooked. I'd be wearing lingerie, suggesting have me for dessert. And he'd actually want to eat ice cream and watch Project Runway. The signs were there, right? The signs were there. And as much as I wanted to not be divorced, the reality is inside of that marriage, I probably never would have had children. And I really wanted a family. So while the divorce was a result of dishonesty, and not just his, mine also, because I wasn't honest with myself about the fact that I was being rejected by my husband. Divorce was the result, but the opportunity was the ability and the chance to have a family. Marriage number 2, 7 years, 3 kids. So I met my second husband shortly after I was obtaining my foster care license. So the first time he spent the night over, about 90 days into the relationship, he never left. Within 6 months, we had 3 foster kids and I was pregnant. It was moving fast, really fast. And on the outside, it seemed like a really awesome marriage, like a beautiful story. And it should have been. I wish it was. I had a girlfriend who I would call when he disrespected me. And she'd say, you must want it. And it hurt. It hurt me when she said that. But it made me think, is she right? No, she's not right. I do not want a husband that calls me a liar and spits in my face. I don't want a marriage where periodically I have to pack up my children and flee. But I also don't want to be divorced twice. I don't want to be a single mother of 3. I don't want the financial burden that comes with divorce, the shame, the guilt, the judgment, the questions. Why'd you stay so long? Why didn't you stay longer? Always the questions. When he blacked my eye the day before my name change hearing, all of a sudden it was clear. I'd been asking the wrong question. The question isn't what I don't want. The question is, what do I want? And what I want was peace of mind, joy, the ability to be a good parent, to be myself. And I couldn't have those things inside of that marriage. And so there was divorce number 2. It was the result of unkindness, and not just his unkindness, my unkindness to myself, my willingness to be small, to accept the unacceptable. But it also brought with it an opportunity for peace, for joy, for me to be myself, for me to be on this stage in front of you sharing the story. And so now I stand before you, a twice divorced, adult child of divorce lawyer, with hope and excitement for my 3rd marriage. Because I know for a fact that the decisions I've made in the past do not disqualify me from having the marriage I desire in the future. So look out now. Okay. Thank you. For my new dating profile, strong, powerful, inspiring woman seeks new opportunity with honest, kind, generous, interesting, and independent man. Thank you.
Well, what a way to get us started. I think that is a conversation. It's just to tease you out, to get a feeling. You've seen a lawyer. She's now a serious, competent divorce lawyer, but who has had 2 divorces, 2 marriages and 2 divorces in a situation that she ended up being unhappy in all those situations. If you've just joined us, welcome. This is Come Let's Talk with me, Kassim Kayira, and we are live on 75W Radio. 75wradio.com is our website, and also on Uma Connect. You can just look for us on Uma Connect as well on YouTube. Just search for Uma Connect and you'll find Come Let's Talk with Kassim Kayira. And we are streaming live on YouTube at the moment, as well as live on Zoom where you are. Welcome to tonight's conversation, another difficult conversation, I might say, on divorce. And tonight we are concentrating on the question, why divorce? We shall be doing this in 3 series, inshallah. We've got lawyers who have been lined up, especially for the next 2 sessions. The second session is actually the process of divorce. And then the 3rd week, God willing, we shall be talking about the post-divorce situation. How do you relate after you've gone through your divorce situation? And that is in a mature way. So religiously, secularly, socially, how do you manage that? Tonight, we shall just be concentrating especially on why divorce. We've seen some of the reasons that have been given by the lawyer there, talking about a situation of incompatibility, unhappiness, and so on. It would be interesting just to hear your own take. But before we do that, interestingly, we shall go, because tonight I'm honored to have with us Sheikh Sulaiman Chibuka. We were supposed to have a pastor from Coventry, from the Zion Temple Church, couldn't make it because of a last-minute engagement that came up and therefore interfered. But it doesn't take away anything. What we've managed to see is we shall also listen to a clip or watch a clip that talks about the situation in the Bible, and this to be representative of the many people that join our conversation here. And I just want to recognize people, members who are here. I'll just do the running order quickly. Leila Narubega all the way from Kampala. We've got Latif, we've got Sawia, we've got Salma, Said Katende in the United States, Ryan, NK, Nilfa in UK, Matthew Pearson. That's a new name. That's a new guest on here. Lorraine, you have been here before. Kitunzi AM, Sheikh Kamlegea, Kagombe, Joy Mutesi, turakwakiriye cyane. Jajja Munira, MD Sincere Devotions. Oh, that's a new one as well. Jackson Egesa has been on before. iPhone, Imam, FK, Farida Tege, Farida Mitiana, Amina Amba, Aha, Hajjat Sarah Semakula, Sheikh Sulaiman Chibuka, who will be trying from Islam channel rather, not Islamic channel, with whom we shall be delving into the issue of divorce, why divorce from an Islamic perspective, and then we'll get a chance to watch that clip. Because again, like I've said, the priest who was supposed to be with us tonight pulled out at the very last minute due to an engagement that came up. Abdurrahim, Aha, Amina Amba, Faida Tege, welcome very, very much. The way we do it on this conversation is it's open interaction. We just talk to one another. We don't talk at each other. We speak with one another, having a conversation around those difficult subjects and trying to find answers to these particular situations. So we've seen from a lawyer's perspective, a lawyer perspective, but also her personal story, which has been included into this particular situation, looking at the issue of divorce. And we are talking about divorce now because statistically, January is the month in which the biggest number of divorce cases actually. So divorce lawyers have been absolutely busy around this time, and that is globally, mainly in the Western world, not so much back home. But our own situation is our divorce actually sometimes takes a different format. So you'll find that somehow if you came through the window, definitely be ready to also go out in the same manner. Sheikh Sulaiman Chibuka, welcome to tonight's conversation. I think it is only fair that we start just hearing whether divorce, why divorce, why divorce. I think that will be a good place to start from, especially for our visitors tonight and the guests, people viewing and following this conversation tonight. And we will be coming to you as usual, so don't be surprised if I just pick up on you just to share your own experiences. It might be that you are not divorced. I'm hoping you're not. But if you have, then a good point to have a conversation. If you haven't, at least you know someone who has, and there will be an experience, probably the reasons as to why that happened. Sheikh Sulaiman Chibuka, welcome. Sheikh Chibuka, you can unmute yourself. You're a co-host, so you have the mandate to unmute yourself. Are you there? Okay, as I get Sheikh Sulaiman Chibuka,
Yeah.
Oh, alaikum salam. I was getting worried that you disappeared. I could see you were there, but then we couldn't hear you. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Thank you very much for making the time to join us tonight. A difficult conversation we are talking about, an unhappy one, divorce.
Yeah, I think it's a very combination of the three. It's a difficult one and unhappy, probably unwelcome, but a very important one, especially as we know that you are talking about realities. Just like, I don't know what should I say. I think the divorce, I think to marry is just like death to life. So it is unexpected.
Sheikh Sulaiman, are you unable to have your video on? It would actually be very good if you can. If you cannot, then fair enough. But it will be very good at least to see you. It makes a lot more credibility to a viewer and the listener when they.
Okay, just wait me a second. Okay. I hope you should pick me up.
All right. Yeah, that's fantastic. Yes. Welcome.
Yeah, Jazakallah. Thank you so much, brother Sheikh Kayira, for such a very wonderful topic, which I know it's one of those really important, issues that are related to our communities, and it is an aspect of life, and it should not be considered as a taboo, but has got to be addressed. And I think you asked a very important question, and we had that anecdotal speech from the previous video played, where there is a personal experience of what it meant to the person, and probably comparing, the life, post-divorce. And I think what I've taken from that actually is not very much different from the answer, I would say, part of the answer as to why divorce. I think what we got to establish, first of all, in Islam is that divorce is, it is one of the institutions, part of the bigger institution of marriage. And probably you could say it's part of the automatically inbuilt solutions, the checks and balances in case the marriage doesn't go well. Why do we call it an inbuilt institution? Is because, of course, where probably there is instability and the turbulences, and the situations that are beyond repair, but where the marriage has involved children. Divorce does not spell an end the relation between the parents of the children that are involved. And they're always going to be, cordial relation with the parties and extended parties that are involved, the in-laws. Sometimes, divorce does not spell an end to the, the good relation the parties have always had. Therefore, in Islam, divorce, which can categorically be defined as the process by which, one of the processes by which, marriage can be brought to a legitimate end, not by virtue of death, but by, a decision taken in this, I don't know whether that is the intended discussion, but divorce, if it's the word that translates the Arabic word talaq, then we know that this process will be triggered by the husband, by one of the spouses. It's no one that is not, that canon is not an exercise of both parties. Although the wife also in a marriage, according to the teachings of Islam, she too has the right, to seek, to utilize the injunction to bring marriage to a legitimate end, of course, given the circumstances. So coming back to your question, whether it is either on both sides, whether it is the husband, triggering a divorce, which you call talaq, or it is the woman who triggers an end to the marriage, which you call al-khul'a, or it is by means of dissolution, which we call al-fasakh, whether the authority, whether existing parties deem it right that this marriage should come to an end because of the circumstances they see in between the two parties. All in all, it is meant to be a solution sometimes to the inherent or the underlying problems, which cause disharmony and discomfort to either parties or both parties as intended. As we all understand, part of the purpose of marriage is to fill that vacuum. And from Islamic perspective, marriage is a fulfillment of half of one's faith. So if that area, if that sanctuary appears to be infringed on and it is rendered, unstable, then probably divorce can be a solution so that someone does not get, lose, their inner worth because of the suffering that might be involved. So this divorce is a solution to an underlying solution, which appears to be, or turns out to be too big, for the parties to come to an agreement. And the continuation of marriage, where it is seen to be probably a continuous, suffering and difficulty, and probably an experience of bondage in the relationship. So it brings a new ray of hope both parties, and that's why it should not be looked at as a taboo or something that is bad. One thing that has got to be mentioned here from Islamic perspective is that it is not something that is always given, the primary, consideration. Of course, effort has got to be exhausted to ensure that it is protected, resuscitated, and all efforts are geared to make sure that where there are problems, they can be resolved. But where it comes to that point where it cannot be a solution, then it has got to be accepted as one, and the last lifeline that should reinstall, the happiness to both parties. And also, and therefore, from that perspective, where there was some kind of abuse, it turns out to be a liberating lifeline, so that people do not have to live. And we know there are so many experiences we hear of every now and then, where people either out of naivety or out of, authoritarian approach in the relationship, they feel they have no way out. And what began as, subhanAllah, a dream that, is translating to reality, turns out to be living a life of enslavement and bondage. So if it appears to be that this only solution becomes a liberating experience, and there is nothing wrong at all. And finally, it opens up the new opportunities for, a better life. We see examples in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when we draw that there are examples of marriages where there was no, physical, emotional, or psychological abuse. Marriage appears to be on the surface very admirable, and everyone would like to emulate the experience. But one of the parties feels that there is no chemistry. And I had to go to the best of the guy, source of guy, and the Prophet say, "Oh, Messenger of Allah, I have no problem with my husband, but I feel there is no chemistry between me and my husband. And if I'm worried that if it continues, I may be I might act prejudicially, and that might affect the rights of my husband over me. And the Prophet ﷺ took that into consideration. So it should not be looked at negatively, but it is a solution to what would be an underlying problem, a liberating experience, but also an opportunity, for better experience of this in
Yes, man. Barakallahu fikum. The way you made the introduction actually sanitizes divorce, because the moment someone hears divorce, it comes across as something that is actually taboo, as you've said, because it's almost always the result of a difficult process, especially when there have been irreconcilable differences between the two parties. It's about whether there has been an effort to try to stop this process, to try to halt this process by creating an enabling environment that would allow the two parties to live together like they have lived. I can see the chat room is already beginning to get, excited, and I'm happy to recognize a lawyer who had told me was unavailable managed to somehow appear, and this is very happy for me. Frances K. and Dungu, very, very happy, Council, that you managed to join us. I know you are in Kamori there, so we'll tap onto you when we come to the legal issue. Now, Sheikh Suleiman, when you mentioned the issue of divorce now becoming an avenue that frees the parties, either one of the parties or the two parties, because one of them actually might be suffering. The problem is in these times, in modern times, divorce has become something that is so light. People would take divorce very seriously in the past, as opposed to now. Why has that? Why have we? How have we got to that? And that's a question I actually put to a lawyer as well, just to sort of see, because that keeps their hands busy, their files busy, but at the same time, it speaks of something that is going on. What has happened now to us as a community that is pushing divorces to be something that is so light? It's just like buying a cigarette from the shop.
It's very difficult to pinpoint at one specific reason why it's become so, rampant and so easy nowadays. But of course, maybe this is the situation in certain countries, but maybe still an institution that is marriage, an institution that is still greatly respected, and so much that people are always ready to go that extra mile, as we need to use be the case of the earlier generation. I use the word modernity, which has always been around, but is subject to change. What is modern today might look Asian, maybe the next coming 200, 100 years. But what I would say, generally, looking at the small community that I see, there's quite a lot of misunderstanding and misguidances between what appears to be, a very an easier way out of the relationship as the first priority. But also, I don't want to say there is a lot of what we call independence, and I don't want to use the word misunderstood or misinterpreted meaning of independence and freedom to do what you want, because when it comes to marriage, of course, as we understand, there are always going to be tests and balances. It's never meant to be a bed of roses. They're always going to be difficult, and those difficult appear at the moment when they call for your canons of patience and endurance and perseverance, which greatly happens to be appreciated in the long run. But nowadays, I don't know whether it's a question of freedom and maybe the institutions, the availability of the institutions that give permission and ease of bringing an end that institution with the total disregard of the opportunity or the leave, at least of the possibility of giving it another chance and give the possibilities. And we see the impact of that happens to be so great, and the regrets are so big when it's always too late. But I would say that looking at institutions where there are civic institutions that always make it easy for people to seek their own way, and then probably you find that the propensity to resort to easy divorce is going to be very high. But where sometimes people, subhanAllah, still attach great reverence to the bigger meaning of marriage, in terms of whether they draw the moral compass from the religious and the spirituality, you'll find that sometimes the mechanism and the propensity to resort to that can be slightly very different. And probably the means that is available to facilitate, they differ. If you seek, for example, some kind of support from civic institutions, the kind of support you are likely to get is going to be slightly different if you are to resort, for example, to to religious institutions. And the unfortunate thing is that these two institutions disregard one another. Each one of them sees that the other one gives wrong information, this one gives wrong information, leaving the party in between. And that somehow facilitates, probably the high propensity of divorce that we seem to be in what we call modern days.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Suleiman. And Isma, if we can please just ready that clip on the Christian view so that we can just sort of see the other side. How does Christianity, especially where actually divorce is very much more serious, much more difficult within Christianity. I remember Pope Benedict, when he had just been selected, one of the things actually he came to touch on was the issue of divorce within church, because could death, being together till death doth us part, be revised in circumstances where the situation demanded so. I remember the Pope when he had just, when he had just been elected. That is one of the areas that he was going to tackle very, very seriously. Isma, if you have that clip ready, but in the meantime, all right, that's fine. We'll just have that clip and then we'll open up the conversation. Sheikh Suleiman, you can stay there. And also, Francis, I'll be coming to you because I think there are few questions that are coming up from the legal side, probably even to give us just the general pictures to the situation as you see it tonight. Isma, please, let's have that clip and then we'll pick.
So would God ever lead a Christian to get a divorce? We know from scripture, divorce is not God's heart. In fact, it's the opposite of God's heart. But we're made in his image and his likeness. I think it would be fair to say divorce is the opposite of our heart. We all want to run toward love, toward fidelity, toward covenant, toward self-giving love and partnership with another person till death do us part. It's how we're wired. Having said that, those who end up considering divorce are doing so grievously because of some hard circumstances. And God may also consider divorce grievously because of some hard circumstances. In fact, in Jeremiah, we find out that God says to Israel, who is his wife, I divorce you because of your repeated infidelity, spiritual infidelity, meaning they are worshiping other gods. So they're becoming intimate with other gods. He says, I divorce you, but my plan is to remarry you again one day. And so Yahweh is a divorced deity, divorced and remarried actually to the same woman, his wife, Israel. And then that becomes the church in the New Testament, the bride of the Lamb. So when someone is in a difficult scenario and they're seeking guidance, we do not say divorce is never an option. We say, what does wisdom and what does love dictate? The New Testament gives a couple of examples of where divorce may be acceptable. God talks about through Jesus in Matthew 5 and Matthew 19 about infidelity, marital infidelity as breaking the covenant. So if your partner is unfaithful to you with someone else, that may be an occasion to get a divorce. That's the occasion that caused God to get a divorce from Israel in the Old Covenant, spiritually speaking. Having said that, God wasn't quick to play the divorce card and jump to that. It was after repeated infidelity and after begging and pleading and working toward unity, he realized that he's now just going to become an enabler if he continues to just do nothing about it. And there are scenarios where someone is so habitually unfaithful that we can become an enabler if we just say, well, I would never divorce you, so I'll let you continue to do that. An enabler is someone who says, I won't participate in the crime, but I'll help you. I'm not going to rob a bank with you, but I will be sitting outside with the engine running in the car just in case you need to get somewhere fast. And so there may be times where actually divorce is the loving response. It says, you're not listening to my pleading and to my challenging. This is me saying, I have to bring accountability to your actions. Some psychologists say that people don't change just what we ask them to change. They change what we hold them accountable to change. In 1 Corinthians, the Apostle Paul also says that there may be some non-believers who just don't want to be married to us anymore, and they want a divorce. And he says, when they want that divorce, let them go. It's in the imperative. Don't single-handedly try to save a marriage and force it to endure. If your partner wants out, then you are to, for the sake of peace, let them go. So there are some things that are allowable, from a Christian point of view that are not God's primary will. They're not his heart, and they're sad. Just like a parent disciplining a child may be the right thing to do, but it's not that the parent enjoys it. Having said that, I will just leave you with this thought. Grace is always the highest option. When grace can prevail in a scenario, forgiveness, reconciliation, mercy, and there can be new life born out of that grace. This is always God's heart. That we can be assured of. Of course, the real question is raised, when do you know when you've passed the line? When has someone gone too far? When does grace itself become an enabling mechanism for someone who needs accountability instead? How can you discern that? That's another question.
Well, thank you very much. I think that paints a little picture into the Christian mind in terms of, what happens to divorce. Can we have exceptions? Can we have situations where divorce can come into play? Especially, if, again, keep repeating this word, in the case where we have got irreconcilable differences, then I think then you start thinking about some of these aspects. In the chat room, Jackson Egesa says, the human being is the most sophisticated machine which comes with no manual or keyboard. Recently, one gender has expectations which no other human being can fulfill, even some when God could fail, expectations out of this world. And Hajat Sarah says, people tend not to value marriage as much as the previous generations used to. Women can today manage financially without men, thus they cannot put up with abuse from men any much longer. So, Kagombe here says stability of marriage related to financial dependence in the days when marriages used to last longer, has the empowerment of women and the financial independence attained become a precursor for divorce? That's an interesting question that I think we are going to put to interrogate in the conversation. And Matthew again comes. Matthew Pearson says God hates divorce, but loves us more than he hates divorce. That's from Jess Duplantis. Well, let's open the conversation here while we have the experts on board, just to have a conversation. You know how we do it here, listening in and sharing our experiences or stories. And we have Sheikh, we have a lawyer, and I'm sure there are experts. You are experts in your own rights, wherever you are sat, going through those difficult situations. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. Maybe you know someone who has. Maybe you managed to avert a situation that was just nearing divorce and you managed just by a flicker to bring back the situation and save the marriage. It will be interesting to hear your part of the story. As usual, I'll just run back quickly to Hajat Sarah just for inspiration to the others who are still shaking, unable to open up their mics. Hajat Sarah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
An interesting conversation where we've already heard from the sheikh, we have heard from the priests, giving a Christian version, and then we have also heard, at least from a lawyer, divorce lawyer at the beginning, where we had this opening conversation. Your own take on divorce. Why divorce?
Well, I was notorious for divorce because if a marriage consists of children, I wouldn't want one. But I also have come to understand that it's something that may not be inevitable, because you can say that they shouldn't divorce, but all of them are living in a toxic kind of environment. Toxic for the children, toxic for the wife and the husband. So probably at one point they have to leave, and everyone take their own separate ways. But for me, it's always the children I want.
No, Hajat Sarah, your line
Things
dropped
can
out.
turn out.
Okay. Yeah, that's better now.
Sorry?
You bled out, your line bled out a little bit, like you always accuse me of. Suddenly, your line.
Oh, my network is a bit unstable, is it?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
You said your worry is more about the children.
Yeah. If the marriage consists of children, I worry about children. So I would always advocate for people to try and reconcile. But there are times when things never work. And when things come to that kind of, if they come to that kind of degree where they can't work, no matter what people do, they can't work.
Sarah, right now there's a terminology that is being used so much in social media. I'm sure you must have come across it. Issue of saying petega. Is it possible that men end up, or people end up in relationships because someone quit God and someone fell in the category, and then they ended up kutegwat, and until reality comes to the light, and this is what leads to divorce? Do you think
Actually,
there's some kind of disingenuousness in the process of people getting into relationships, or does
it
it
is
matter how
there.
you met? Does it
It
matter
is
how
the,
you met? Yes,
it
sorry,
is
go on.
there. It is there on both parties. Men can tell lies when they are proposing to someone, and so can women. And I think that's where the
Which sort of
kukwetega
lies?
comes.
Which sort of lies? Which sort of lies that
Well,
could lead?
they can promise you a lot of things. Some even deny what their age is. Some won't tell you whether they have children or not. And you come in, and that is a wrong start. You thought you are marrying a man who didn't have children, and you come in and you get to learn that he's got more than 2 or 3 or 4. Yeah. And they will lie about their businesses. Someone borrows a car from a friend and just comes, you think you're marrying a posh man when he's not posh at all. Women also do the same thing. You see, these lies do catch up with you when you come to marry someone who you thought you were marrying. When you come in, it's quite different. So the lies also is when you, like what you say, that you divorce before even you've started the marriage, because you're going into something that you didn't want. You thought it's what it is, but then when you come into it, it all is different and you can't cope.
Could there be an issue of pressure on the other hand, pressure from society, because you want to get married so that it is seen that you got married? I mean, you've seen, girl, woman, you've gone to university, you've come back, you've got a good job. There's that immense pressure that comes,
Yeah,
with that.
it's normally the girls that really face that kind of pressure, especially that comes with age, because the parents are worried about their biological clock. They are worried about what the society will say. Oh, she's not married yet. They have their own plans. When you have children, they belong to the society. They have their own plans for them. You can get a phone call from a relative asking you, oh, what is she still doing? She's supposed to be married. They don't care whether children are still in school or what. She hasn't got married yet and she hasn't had children. So society itself has got its own plans and it's got its own timetable, if I may call it that things have to happen at a certain time. And then these are the kind of pressures people face, and they get into marriage with the wrong kind of views or kind of, I don't know what else to say, but it could start off very wrong.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You open us into the conversation. Jackson is a new person into the conversation. I'd like to bring you in here. You've had Hajat Sarah there. I guess are you able to speak? Some people are always listening to the conversations from their workplaces and therefore unable to speak. Jackson, he's there. Hi, Jackson.
Hi.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us.
No worries. Thanks for having us, and it's a good conversation.
Great. Why divorce?
The thing is, people forget that when you're loving someone, you love someone for who they are, not for who they were, not for who they will be. So there are these uncoordinated expectations for people. So people will want, like she said, that I might those kutega or all these things. We are human beings, but we have to understand that people change. You're going to get me when I'm 6-pack. 2 years down the road, I'm 1-pack. So are you going to divorce me because now I've changed?
You're actually one package, because once is one.
So we have to start learning that you love someone for who they are now, not for who they were 2 years ago, who they will be next year, because those are your expectations. You can't come to my brain and know what I'm thinking. What you're thinking is more to do with you than the other person.
I guess I'll stay there. It looks like Hajat Sarah wants to come in there. I think she wants to ask a question.
And
yes.
That's exactly what I'm saying, that people okwetega, and they give you a totally different person, and you come in thinking this is what you're going for, because we all have our own likes and dislikes, and we have set our own plans. We know who we want.
Do our priorities change? Do our priorities change? Could that be an issue as well? Because sometimes you marry someone in poverty and then once you become rich, suddenly they do not match your new status. Could that be an issue? That how do we know that this person would change? This is a question to both of you,
Yeah,
Jackson
priorities may change, but also marrying someone who is showing you something different can be a bad start.
What do you mean?
Like if you lied to me and you showed me a completely different person, and that's the person I'm marrying, and then when I come to your house, I see things which are totally different. You're not the person I married. That's when things just start turning around, yeah? And we won't be in love because I know what I want. I don't care what other people say, but this is what I want. If I want a man who is rich, that's what I want, because I want to drive a beautiful car, yeah? Yeah, these are the things that have to be in place for my love to really to feel that I love something.
Jackson?
So,
Look here, everyone, as she has said, we are all different. We are all different humans. You can't go in the other person's mind and understand what they're thinking. When you're going into a relationship, it's like service. It's like we all have needs. When we are going into a relationship, everyone has their needs. The other person have their needs. You don't know them. They might be thinking things, expecting so many things. Basically, there's so many, because when you're going into a relationship, there are physical needs, psychological needs, emotional needs, social needs, financial. Basically, there's so many needs. Everyone that goes there goes with their own needs. And giving is much a need as receiving. People think, because I'm giving. Sometimes you're giving, but you're needing something. You want something. You're categorizing. So in a relationship, the need is when the need is not fulfilled, relationship will go bad. So needs are usually expectations, and when they're not fulfilled, then the marriage goes bad. But those expectations, usually you might come, you think I have that. Those are your thoughts. So now, how are you going to blame the other person? You have to find a way that you get into a relationship when you're already happy, when happiness is not on self-start. But if your happiness is going to come from what the other person is going to do, you're always going to be miserable. Because today, if I come when I'm blue, tomorrow I come when I'm red, you're going to run mad.
Thank you very much, Gesa. Fantastic kickstart to the conversation. And Hajat Sarah, thank you very much. Kagombe, can you unmute yourself, please? I'd just like to hear a point that sometimes happens in relationships, which is, are there those telltale signs that we see while you're still dating someone and we ignore these things, and yet they become a problem later on? Could that be something of an issue? Kagombe, are you able to speak? Hello, Kagombe, can you unmute yourself, please? I'll go to Amina Amba. Amina, assalamu alaikum. Hello, Amina, are you there? How are you today?
I'm good, thanks. And you?
Alhamdulillah. Well, we are talking divorce tonight, another uncomfortable situation, although we have to talk about it like we do normally. And my question is, are there, because we're asking why divorce? And there are times when you find that people end up becoming incompatible, become uncomfortable about certain things. But things that probably you could have seen and avoided before when you are still seeing this person and dating this person, but you thought you could change the person, and as a result, you lose them. Is that a possibility? Are there those things? Would I be right to say so? That the things that we ignore while dating becoming a problem later on, things that probably could have dealt with, either walked out of a relationship or tried to change, and if it can't change, then avoided the situation altogether.
Yeah, you mean like what some would call like red flags?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I think
Thank you very much.
Check, we tend to think that those things are gonna go away or they're gonna improve or somebody's gonna improve. Yet actually that person was kind enough, especially men, that was kind enough to show you their true self, and they don't really change. So basically you end up seeing 10 years down the line and now you get a different problem. So you're like, okay, I've invested 10 years in this relationship, then I can go anywhere because I've been here so long. I've done so many. I've put so much into this relationship, having the red flags on hold. So, and then remember, these red flags just keep on accumulating. And the other moment, after 10 years, the person is like, now I'm stuck. There's nothing I can do. Until they feel like they can't take it anymore, then they walk away. And anyway, hence it ends up into a divorce. And what I feel like is a big problem, especially for people from like Uganda, it would be like we get into relationships because of like we're just doing it for our parents mostly.
So to appease the parents, to make them happy.
Right. Yeah, we're doing it for them because you may feel like, oh, my mom would want me to marry a Muganda man. So you may find somebody who loves you so much, somebody who would respect you, who ticks all your boxes, but they are not Muganda. You just let them go and end up with a Muganda, and the Muganda man is gonna treat you the certain way which won't be good. And then if you don't like it, it ends up in a comment on handshake.
Oh, Amina, your line is struggling a little bit. We hope we can keep you better. Stay on there. There's a message here in the chat room. Interesting one from Jenny Wilshire, who says, "Why go into marriage in the first place, hurrying yourself without knowing your partner enough to decide that you are compatible? And why think of riches? Since you go into this relationship because of riches, then count that marriage dead before you are even a year into it. My question then is, why do men and women cheat on themselves?" That's a question I think will flag to everybody else. I mean, stay there. Kagombe, I can see your line. You managed to unmute. Greetings to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Che, for this very wonderful topic.
Fantastic. Why?
I don't know.
Yes.
I think there are various reasons why people go into divorce. Research has been done, and if you look up some of the information all over the internet, they will show you that in different parts of the world, a number of reasons have been advanced why people go into, divorce. I was responding to one of the issues raised by Hajat Sarah there, the financial independence that women have achieved. And that's why I was like, so does that mean that women, those days when they used to stay in marriages longer, is it because they did not have, were they staying just because of financial support, because the men were providing for them everything? And the fact that now they're able to provide for themselves, they can no longer tolerate nonsense from men? Maybe yes. But a number of reasons, if you want, there are so many reasons there highlighted why people go into divorce. But for me, I just want to put up a few points. Why we see a lot of people, opting to get out of the marriages, and at what point should someone really consider divorce? I think some of the issues are really reconcilable, I must say, but I think we have levels of patience that we currently cannot maybe be able to exceed. Many people run out of their marriages and then they tend to regret. And then after you see them regretting their decisions, why maybe they could have reconsidered. Then they realize, no, these guys are human and, mistakes happen. Others, even when you attempt to show that you're really, really sorry, you regret some of the actions that have led to the divorce. You are not pardoned again and again if they go back into the same thing. The video you showed us, the lawyer was showing she got married, I think, more than once, and still things didn't work out.
Yeah,
things didn't work out. Then you start to ask, is the problem the people you're getting married to, or maybe yourself? You set your bar so high, and nobody can match that.
Kagombe,
but many need peace.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, go on, please. Sorry.
So I want to say, my dear sisters, when we marry women for whatever reasons, beauty,
everything, time comes when all that ceases to make a lot of sense, and all we want is to enjoy that marriage, to have peace in the marriage. And you see, many times I've had the opportunity to have some of the colleagues of mine who have had some turbulences in their marriages. When you sit there, you see one party is really working to bring misery in the family. You're always looking for reasons to create that misery in the family. Every little happiness that is there, you're always trying to get any reason to, you're always looking for mistakes. You're always after petty issues. You're always in your partner's phone. I mean, you're looking for this reason why the happiness you have should not exist. So I think these are things we need to reconsider. We need to have the bigger picture. First of all, why did we even get married? Even when we want to divorce, we need to first of all find out why did we even first of all get into this marriage before we look at that as an obvious, escape. I know, of course, there are reasons that are beyond control where maybe somebody's life is threatened. But today, people also divorce for very easy reasons. And sometimes they say, yes, to me, these reasons matter. I remember in one of the meetings, I sat with a colleague and the wife said she wants to divorce. We sat in this meeting and the wife pulled out a book and read for us over 30 reasons why she wants to divorce. Things that her husband has not done, how the husband, I mean, she read all these reasons. And after listening to her, we asked her, okay, can you also read for us some of the good things your husband has done for you? She broke into laughter.
She broke into laughter.
Because she did not document anything, but everything bad the man does, she documents. But everything good from this man, it is not documented. So he said, you see, this is the problem. You want to look at every mistake.
I want to hear Amina's thinking after listening to what you've just submitted. Amina, talk to Kagombe. Do you agree? Hello, Amina, are you there? Have you already muted yourself? Let's try to see if we can unmute you. Oh, maybe. Oh, hello. Yes, Amina, you've heard Kagombe's submission. Do you agree?
I agree at some point as well. When I spoke about love and happiness, I think also us, we just need to find our own happiness, like what makes us happy. But again, when there are things you're not happy with, maybe from a man's side and the woman is not happy, that counseling as well. We need to sit down and look back and see what the good things the other person has done, what they are bringing into your life, like what Kagombe is saying, really. It actually also tends to help when you remember. Because at the end of that, it's very hard to just switch and dislike this person because you didn't grow up with this person. So if what they've done bad, basically, they become more, they outweighs the good according to your memory, then it won't take a second to throw them out. But if you sit back and just remember,
so
the good.
What that happens is that the good is easily forgotten, the bad sticks there.
Yeah, you know why it's forgotten? It's because nobody's there to remind you of it.
Or it is what you're supposed to do after all.
Yeah, your friends. If you don't have good friends, these friends who just tell you what you want to hear, who say, oh, he's a bad man, this and this, then you won't get a chance to remember what good is done for you. But
okay, Amina, thank you very much. I'll just widen the conversation. Sheikh Chibuka, I'm sure you're still there. There are two questions that I'll be bringing in for you, but let me widen the conversation a little bit more. Imam Kasozi's hand is up, quite late in Kampala. Thank you very much for being there, Imam. You've had the conversation and how heated it is getting, especially now with both sides giving reasons, sometimes reasons that men are calling flimsy, women are saying serious reasons. You've heard about one who brought out a book and read nearly 30 reasons to divorce. What's your take on that? Why divorce?
Thank you very much. I want first to make a comment on what many people think, that if you you study the man, date him for long, then the marriage will stick.
That is what Jenny Wilshire here said.
That is a dream, because many people who are divorcing fast are those who have taken all that time studying, and what they don't know during what they call the studying time, each of them tells lies or pretends, and the moment they seal, then they divorce. I have seen even those whose children are either pig boys or flower girls. But if 3 months, 6 months after going to the church, then they break down. I think what is critical and what is important is, why do we marry? And what are we looking for in marriage? I'm very certain if we are looking for wealth, we are looking for whatever, marriage will not stand, because one day wealth will go, beauty will go. What is really important, I think, is care, and that care, it may be an attitude to many. Some person will even pretend that he's not being cared for when actually he is being cared for. I have an example, very new example to me that shocked me. Somebody, they have been married for I think 13 years or so. This lady, the husband bought her a Mercedes-Benz and an ML. He gives her
Wow.
2 million shillings per month. Her own, that is for her own, and 3.5 million for upkeep in the home.
The Kameza money.
But the woman, wants to divorce. That she's not happy. Therefore, then the question is, what is happiness? Therefore, what is happiness? Then what is success? People are saying also success. All of these are relative terms, and they depend on individuals. What I think is that we should appreciate why we entered into marriage or why we want to go into marriage. And when we hold up by that, divorce will be the least thing thought about. As an imam, several times people come to me and the first thing they're saying, you see, I am tired with this man, I want to divorce. And he's refusing to give it. I am tired with this woman, I want to divorce her.
Yeah.
You see, but she's not. Then I ask them the question, why do you always start with the end? Why don't you come to me to say, we have issues in the marriage, advise us, okay? Or listen to me, call her, listen to her, and then call us both, and then we see what to do. So the biggest challenge, actually, what I want to end with is, we live in a fallacy, I think. I don't know whether it's the right word to use. Many people, we are living in the metaphysical world when we are thinking about what is the right type of marriage we should be in. Okay, and then we as somebody put it, that I may be married because my mother or my relatives or whatever, they are not interested in this one. All that is not. All that does not work. Even when you are from the same culture, you are from the same religion, you are from the same whatever, you both of you are well to do, okay, or you are both of you are corporate, okay, and actually those are the most, this attitude of saying that no, like Hajat Sarah, I'm sorry to say this, when you say that self-sustaining, but you cannot sustain yourself sexually, and therefore if you want sexual intimacy, which is the legal acceptable, then the marriage becomes the one. Unless many people think, after all, I can get sex even when I'm not married. I can get children even if I'm not married. Actually, all those ideas that have come into our minds, to me, are the problem. And the reason is because we are copying from other people's cultures when we have not taken time to understand these cultures fully. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Imam Kasozi. Fantastic there. Hands here, Said Katende in the US, in Virginia. Come on, I'm sure you've heard Imam Kasozi's submission. fantastic one in terms of the dream. We are living in dreamland. We essentially have a lot of dreams, but I'm sure that's probably not what you wanted to say. And Shakira will be coming to you after. Said Katende, go ahead, please.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa
Wa
barakatuh.
alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. What time is it in the US where you are in Virginia?
It's 4:15 p.m.
4:15. Okay, it's 21:15 in London here.
MashaAllah.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Why?
So
I'm sure you've been listening to the conversation.
I had several points, which some of them have been hinted on. But my perception is more or less the approach to marriage, the way we begin that engagement makes it null and void right from the start. When you look at how people meet today, especially through social media, we do not know much about our preferences with the people we meet sometimes. So it's kind of, did you call it Poetega?
I didn't call it. It's what it is called now. It's the trending word now. Yes, it's Kwetega. Yes.
There is more of Poetega and Poetegura with selfish motives, which in the end, sometimes it doesn't work out. So with all the frustrations, it tends to be a toxic environment, like Sister Hajat Sarah mentioned. So by the way, some people don't want to divorce. She or he states like, for my kids, I'll stay. Or because I'm benefiting, say 60%, I'll stay. And the environment becomes toxic. But my point is the way we approach marriage is not the right way. People are no longer genuine while they are starting this relationship. Others are materialistic. They go in with, materialistic intentions. There is no sympathy. There is no genuine love. There is no family support. Like growing up, you could see people consulting maybe their uncles or their aunties or elder brother about issues concerning marriage. If you ask the audience right now, including some of our elders, and ask them whether they had a kind of talk prior to identifying a partner or preparing them into, that new kind of relationship, you might be surprised. People don't talk to their children growing up with issues to deal with relationship. So we only deal with what we have learned, maybe from friends or the internet and stuff like that. So summarily, family support, toxicity, domestic violence, lack of genuine love, materialistic gain, and approach to marriage are some of the core reasons why we are having so many divorces today.
Thank you very much, Said Katende. And Shakira, I was going to come to you, but allow me, please, to go to Francis, Council Francis, who I'm sure might not be with us for a very long time. And she's a divorce lawyer. She handles these matters. I think she would be appropriate to answer to some of these issues that have been raised so far. Thank you very much, Said Katende, all the way from Virginia. I'm sure the conversation just begins to get interesting now as we start digging deeper and deeper. Council, welcome to tonight's conversation. I'm sure you can see how interesting the conversation is going. First of all, your own take. Why divorce?
First of all, I'd like to thank everybody who has made all these submissions. They've been absolutely quite interesting, and to hear it from different perspectives. They are real because these are real. The people bringing out real issues, not things which you just read in the books, but real live issues. I do apologize. I've come late and I've been leaving and coming in due to family issues, but nevertheless, I'm here.
Yeah.
First of all, before we talk about divorce from a legal perspective, we need, for me personally, even from a legal perspective, we need to understand what is marriage. You know, because it's marriage. You can't talk about divorce without understanding what marriage is.
Mm-hmm.
So in simple terms, I'm not using dictionary, just in a layman's language, the way we understand it. This is a relationship between two people who have made a commitment. They make vows, they make promises to stay together for the rest of their lives. In a legal perspective, it's not even just a casual thing that I like somebody or I'm in love. This is not about, love is part of it, but this is more than love. This, you're into a contract legally.
That's what I was just about to say, that in Islam, Sheikh Chibuka had mentioned it before you came on. He said it is a social contract. So
it is, absolutely. And
yeah.
Long time ago, even historically, marriages used not only to be used for love, it used to seal relationships between nations. You could see the Queen of, or the Prince of France marrying the King of England or Spain, and all, to make sure that their relationship stays solid. You know, so it is beyond, even though the people have not met themselves, it is beyond what people think. Oh, that day when you're wearing the white dress and it's all spending all this money. It's beyond that. It is a very, very serious thing. It's a very serious institution.
Now,
and I think people need to understand that.
Yes.
After that, let me go on. So that's why people need to understand the consequences of divorcing act. That it is not something which you're going to go in and leave easily without any consequences, you know, and so that's why before, unless you know you're sure this is something, it's like signing a contract to a land. Before you are aware what you're going into, is, you know, are there any encumbrances? Are there anything before you commit yourself? Because it's a lifetime commitment. If you jump into it and you want to come out of it, my God, you will have to suffer consequences, whether you like it or not. That's when you go to divorce.
So, Council, I wanted to use the term that we are using here, which has become very popular now, kwetega. I don't know if you've heard about kwetega.
Oh, kwetega.
Yeah. so if you've been kwetega and you've kuteguruad, and after being kuteguruad, now you find yourself in that particular situation, that means, so my question to you was, do we then have relationships, serious relationships, considering the definition that you have just used? Because
but you can't.
We enter into that as a contract. We know what we are going into.
I think people, whether they want to kwetega, thinking that there is something they're going to go out to get into and they leave easily, it's not going to happen like that. And I think that's what people need to understand. You can't one day say, I'm going to get married to this man, and tomorrow say, oh, I want to leave. In the UK, for instance, under the law, you can't even file for petition for divorce unless you've been with that person for a year. So you can't just say, now I'm bored. You know, so you can't file it for divorce. But I'm bored, or he snores a lot, he doesn't do this, or she goes out a lot. No, you can't do that. There must be 1 year. Basically, you have to stay in it for 1 year before even you think about filing for divorce. And the law makes it very clear. There are only 5 grounds on which you can file for petition. Basically, there is nothing like mukoye or things like that. I'm bored, I've seen somebody else who I want. No, I think people think it is easy to divorce, but actually it is not straightforward as people think that afterwards it's going to happen. because they're in law, there are only 5 grounds on which you can divorce somebody. Only 5, no more than that. One can say, for instance, in summary, I'll brief them out, like adultery. And it can not only be adultery, the respondent must also show that cannot tolerate it. I can see some people saying, I can see someone is, your husband is committing adultery, but the wife is tolerating it. So what is your case? You see what I mean? So those are 2, one ground, adultery, and the other person not being able to tolerate it. The another ground has got to be behavior, and the behavior must be unreasonable behavior. And again, you've got to show how that behavior is unreasonable. And then the other one has got to be desertion. You've been in a marriage and then you leave your wife or your husband for 2 years. You've deserted it, So it's not like you've gone away for a month and 2 months and therefore you file a divorce, they've deserted me. No, that it's got to be like 2 years.
They bring us back from Kampala running that after 2 months that we have deserted them.
No, you've not been deserted. So you can't file. So they are limiting it because they're trying to safeguard this institution, because the institution of marriage is something which was just beyond love. It results into having children. There are so many consequences. There are assets. It's a lifetime commitment. If you know you're not going to be able to succumb to this, just don't get married. Just to stay the way you are. But if you decide to go in, just know that you only have 5 reasons. Unless those 5 reasons are fulfilled, or one of the 5 reasons are fulfilled, you won't get your divorce. So it's not easy. And I can see, I'm counsel in the UK and I'm also counsel in Uganda. And we hear about this, especially in Uganda, they make it even harder. Divorce proceedings going on for years and years, and they're saying, why should people stay together? Do they want to first kill each other for them to separate it? But it goes beyond. It's like entering into a contract and say, well, I'm tired of this contract. I want to go. There are consequences. How about the assets? How about the children? How about all these things? That's why before divorce takes place, all the things needs to be looked at, So even if it says we've been separated for 2 years, because 2 years, then both parties have got to consent that actually we've been separated. You might be separated and then during those 2 years, and one day before the 2 years, you come back in your relationship. You have to restart again your 2 years. You can't say, oh, we've been separated for 2 years. It's got to be 2 years, not 2 years and a half, 1 year and a half or something like that. It's got to be really 2 years. The only where you're not going to need this consent to divorce is when you've been separated for 5 years. Now, that's 5 years. By that time, if you're not going back to your husband or your wife for 5 years, then you can start the divorce proceedings. That now the court is completely sure that this relationship has actually broken. It's not repairable. But they always think that they give it an opportunity. Maybe after a year, you can get back together. Maybe after. But even when you file for the divorce, and probably that's something which we'll talk about in another session, there is a process. You don't simply say, now file for divorce, you're going to get it instantly. So not until the decree absolute has been pronounced, because they keep on thinking, okay, you might get back. You might get back. Together, you might have some counseling, you might reconsider, you might wake up and think this was a dream. Because I think in law, although they say divorce is quite rampant, but they're trying to restrict as much as possible people from divorcing.
Counsel, thank you very much. Hold that thought. Let me bring in the Sheikh now that you've brought in the legal aspect. I'm sure there is the Islamic perspective as well, which also see how easy does divorce become. Sheikh Sulaiman Chibuka, you are there. You've had the counsel presented 5 reasons or 5 grounds upon which divorce can happen. It sounded from your introduction that yes, well, you are not supporting divorce, but you are saying it might be a way out of a difficult situation. And it starts from marriage before we end up in divorce. Sheikh Sulaiman Chibuka, what would be the grounds then for someone to divorce from an Islamic perspective, and does it clash with what the secular law says?
Thanks very much again, and thank you, the council, for such a very insightful and very informative comment, and
very passionate as well.
Yeah,
she's passionate about that.
Oh, thank you.
I think there is a lot to take from this, and I think there is. I don't want to call disparities between the legal approach to the institution of marriage and the spiritual one, let alone the traditional premise as well. But what we find is that there is something really very, very interesting that the Quran and Islamic guidance, the institution of marriage, mentions. And it talks about the subtle but the most important ingredients that can determine the success, or on which the institution of marriage can be built. And when the Quran talks about this, it actually makes us one of the signs of the power and the wisdom of the Creator. And what it does mean to us is that this institution, no matter how much you can put in our understanding, it is a very, very sophisticated institution that can hardly be left to personal whims and our own understanding of how to go about it. And that's why we see that throughout generations, especially the youngsters nowadays, they have their own formula of looking for the potential spouse. And we look at them, when the older generation look at their approach to starting building their nest and the preparation for that, you just wonder. A few years ago, I had a youngster who wanted to meet a potential soulmate in the future. But the kind of questions that one person was asking, I don't want to say whether it was a male or the female, it was very, very strange. And just wonder, how could this be the building block? But to them, it does matter. For example, some of the question was that, if you're walking around, what kind of bad song would you like to hear? What time in the morning would you like to hear it? And this guy was about a difference of 15, 20 years. Said, this is rubbish. It's not serious. How could you have such kind of questions? The point I'm making here, God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, talks about the fundamental ingredient, the subtle and the core, foundation, which is stable marriage, that probably makes divorce a distant reality, can be built. And he talks about love and talks about compassion. These are two invaluable values, core factors, and they are very difficult to teach because they are as a result of the hard work of how we are brought up, how well have we utilized the experience of the environment, the ecosystem we've grown up to help us become the kind of person that will be the best father for those children and the best mother for that children. Best in the sense that when it comes to love, for them it will mean sacrifice where there is the potential opportunity to be selfish. Love to be protective where you would feel that, well, you should be the victim, in this kind of situation. But also love to mean respect. And these are core ingredients that are either happen to lack when divorce kicks in. And that's why you realize that, and this will be a topic probably for the future conversations coming, as the Sheikh mentioned, but we realize that even when Islam encourages, where it sees divorce as a final solution, it really still throws in opportunities for rebuilding, a resuscitation and reconsideration and reflection, so that it doesn't have to be the reality. But the fact is, and the second aspect is rahmah. The other one is love, and the second one is compassion. And these are core ingredients that have got to be built on the most important reason why the two people choose one another for lifelong partners. In Islam, we are guided that you can choose your mate either because of their beauty, because of their wealth, because of their family status, because of the beauty, wealth, family background, or their faith. But again, we are reminded, choose the one who excels spiritually. Then you'll have achieved the best of both worlds. And this is really very, very important. Where the two couples do not center, they don't rest their hope and their vision and their mission, this marriage, upon pleasing and being guided by the spiritual, trajectory, it becomes very difficult when the challenges kick in. Because remember, the challenges are always working. The forces start pulling people to, away. The natural phenomena is when two people meet, the chances of them, diverting and moving different ways is normal. And when people are miles away from one another, chances of them coming together become so high. And this is what happens now. Regarding what the lawyer mentioned about how strict and how difficult this nation has got to be, and how one has to think about the very serious repercussions. I think Islam tends to take not a very soft, but a very considerate approach to that. In that, as we mentioned, it should not meant to be a bond, an institution where, people have to live in some kind of bondage. I think one of the most interesting and the most difficult aspect of human being is that we are emotional beings. When you deal with someone who has got those instinctive temperaments, you don't know how I'm going to react tomorrow. You don't know how I'm going to feel when I come back from what has been a very hectic day. It becomes very difficult to bring all these kind of emotions and feelings and the joy and the happiness, the sadness into our ecosystem in the family. And some people may not be prepared to handle the situation. So someone is going to leave that situation where I realize it's going to be very difficult. The mountain is so steep for me every single day. I try to harmonize and get on with my plan. It becomes very difficult. The door is not meant to be closed. Of course, counseling has got to be in, support has got to be, sought, and so on and so forth. But it should not meant to be, very, very difficult. What we are saying is that Islam, among the cardinal objectives, looks at the preservation of the family unit. And that's one of the core objectives of the religious guidance. And the family and marriage gives the institution of marriage. And that's why effort has got to be made by all means to make sure that it's ring-fenced, protected, resuscitated, and all the things done to ensure that at least there is continuity. Because as we know, you can judge the stability and the progress and the moral values of the society, starting with the core values of the family. Where the family values tend to be shambolic, you would imagine how much is going to reflect and the image on the wider community.
So, what would be the grounds then? Yeah, the grounds that have been raised, the 5 grounds. What would be the grounds in Islam to allow that divorce? Why to divorce?
So, sorry, can you say the question again, Brother Kassim?
And I was just putting the question to you that considering the 5 points that Council raised, the grounds upon which divorce can be seen, what would be the grounds from an Islamic perspective? Where do we start from just to say now a divorce can actually be activated? The process of a divorce can be activated.
Well, I could say, of course, the first and the fundamental reason is the fundamental ground would have to be where there is a betrayal of the trust. And now the word trust is very, very big. It's what we call an amana. The Prophet Prophet mentioned that one of the most binding conditions that should be fulfilled is that by which the legitimacy of the relation becomes valid. Right? In other words, what renders the other one to become a wife of the husband, a husband of the wife, any condition, the fundamental condition is the expectation that there is going to be observed, honesty and integrity and respect, with all that it takes to make the marriage honest, fidelity and so on and so forth. Now, in the absence of this, that can constitute the ground for that. Now, the issue of provision, for example, wealth and financial muscle, all these can be valid, but these are some of the conditions that can fluctuate. Tomorrow, as one of the brothers was Mr. Kagombe mentioned that some of the people have divorced, quite a very significant number of them tend to regret when they realize things have taken a change for the better, but the door has been closed on them. So when you put and hang the success of marriage on what is physically feeble and very fluctuating, then it can be very difficult. But all in all, we've got to say, if there is, the failure, the explained failure in expectation, failure of the husband who's got the means, for example, to look after their family and provide for them, that can constitute the ground, for divorce. Where there is, infidelity, that could constitute divorce. Or sometimes there might be some physical developments, physical aspect of, of the health, by which it becomes, for example, one party to find that they can no longer fulfill the obligation, or the right.
Is that impotence? Are you referring to impotence in that case? Or?
Sorry?
Are you referring to impotence? Is that when they become impotent, unable to fulfill as part of it?
Impotence could be part of that. All of these can be grounds for that, but it should, in absence of these, and if the reason is, for example, the fluctuating factors, then this is where we go to say that probably both parties may have based their vows on what is feeble. By he who raised their vows on the highest moral compass, on the highest moral trajectory, that will always even pull them, no matter how much they go deeper in the world of difficulty.
I'm putting this question to you, and then I'll move it to counsel after you answer that question. It's the same question I've just put to counsel. Someone here in the chat room says, what if Nganze Bintami genuinely fatigued Bintami? So, share to you now, could that be a ground for divorce?
Sometimes Bintami is what we call, I don't want to say it is being selfish, but it's a question, what does it mean by Bintami? Bintami could mean, actually, it's too much, it's unbearable, I've tried my best, it's too much for me. So the word Bintami can be taken, literally, but can actually mean something really very serious. The woman has been, has been very patient, but the infidelity has no end to it. And there could be potential, health risks that could be involved. Or maybe there's no provision at all. There's no care, there's no attention. Maybe this person doesn't seem to be the best father of my children. I'm so much worried about that. It could be a ground, but we should not, what we should say, we should not quickly jump on the word Bintami simply because I have seen someone has made it in life, and why can't I make it with this? The one I took to be, the soul of my life. So Bintami, let me go and try elsewhere. You never know. Sometimes success is always around the corner. The moment you feel it is too much, it's unbearable. And the moment you
Thank you very much, Sheikh. I'll move the question to counsel now. Counsel Francis, you've had. I'm putting the same question to you, which is Bintami. Can I be allowed to move on? Is that one of the reasons?
Unfortunately, Bintami is not a grounds for divorce.
Why force me to continue being in a situation that is already Bintami?
The law regulates marriage. This is your private life. This is one of your life which is being regulated by the law. Because it's not affecting only you. It's affecting the children. It's affecting the community. You being divorced, the children are going to be affected. The tax you're paying, the work, the whole system is going to be. That's why the law regulates marriage and divorce. And I think people underestimate those words which they say probably in a minute, for better, for worse, in sickness and health, till death do we part. They do underestimate the seriousness of those words. That is a bond, that is an agreement, that is a contract. It's like going to, I don't know, people go to purchase cars and they sign an agreement and they read through it. They even give you a cooling off period that you go and read and be sure whether this is something which you're happy with before you sign. And I think of late, people are only excited about the wedding day and the cake and all that, saga and the excitement, not knowing actually what they're going into. It's a legal contract, the seriousness. I've got clients whereby some of them are absolutely tired of staying with their wives. But my advice to them is that, I'm sorry, this woman is going to take you to cleaners. You've been in this marriage for 20 years. Yes, she's been at home. A mother is not working. You've got X number of wealth. Are you willing to go and benefit? Because she's going to take everything. If we go, she's got the children, she's got everything. No one is going to do. This is what the law is going to say. When it comes to the division of wealth and what she's going to take. And then they come up saying, oh, but it's me who has been working. Or it's me, not realizing the vows which they say that what is mine is yours What is yours is mine. So they've already given out their wealth within those few words, and they think that, no, the houses are mine, the land titles are all in my name, they don't belong to her. You know, in Uganda, for instance, you cannot sell your own land, you as a married man, without the consent of your wife, has got to sign that they agree for you to sell off that land. You know, so that is how serious marriage is. Now, are you ready for this person to be the determinant factor on your wealth? You know, you have to be really serious before. So my question is, in the sense that
the chat room already, Jenny is saying, Jenny Wilshire is saying at the moment, I'm happy I'm single because I'm not for divorce. If I'm married, I want my marriage to be faithful and not breaking up. And actually, she's already saying, I mean, it's as well she's single. I don't have to go through what married people go through their relationships as married couples. There are so many reasons why we have a lot of divorces nowadays. That's almost
but to say that,
scary now.
But just to conclude on that point, marriage is beautiful. You know, there were two heads are better than one. You know, if it's done properly, children are the family is built up on that institution. And I'm not saying that single parents are not doing a good job, but when you're two, it's like you exchange ideas and the development. That's why they say every successful man, if you look behind, there is a woman, or every successful woman, there is a man somehow, somewhere, you know. But if you are a team, this is an institution which needs to be cherished. And all I could say is that before people get into it, and I think one of the gentlemen mentioned there that they need to be some of the preparations which are not there, you know, like similar that if before you sign a contract, read it. How are you going to behave? How are you going to tolerate? How are you going to do this? All things whereby this relationship is not being suffocated, so that it is there for life. Because coming out of it is going to have problematic. It's not going to be as easy of saying, I'm having my cup of tea, I'm leaving, and that's it. It's going to have consequences.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Council. Let's just open up the conversation more to the audience now. I've got Lorraine. Lorraine, your hand was up and you tried to forget. I did see you. Lorraine, go ahead, please. Welcome.
Hi,
how
everyone.
are you today?
I'm
fine,
okay. How are you?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
I'm fine. How are you enjoying the conversation? I'm sure you're enjoying where we are at now.
Oh, well, it's very good. It's
Your
heated up.
comment, please.
Yeah, my comment, I'll just make a few comments. Well, about 4 comments. First of all, I would say majority of our girls are taught to be submissive to their husbands, especially before marriage. But who prepares the boys before marriage? Most of the boys come into marriage with super high expectations, right? For forgetting that women are becoming more liberated. They will refuse to do their traditional like roles. For example, like cooking, and other things, right? Sorry, I got that wrong. Boys come into marriages expecting with high super expectations of oh gosh, I'm getting confused. Majority of
the girls are prepared, the boys are not prepared.
Yeah, no one prepares the boys when they're getting into marriage. For example, they talk about chisakate. When you before marriage, you have to go to chisakate. When you get into marriage, most of these men expect women to have gone to chisakate. They expect them to be submissive. They expect them to do so much. But who prepares the boys? I've not heard anyone say, boys have got to be prepared to do this and this. Boys are always given other responsibilities, like, making money and, becoming like breadwinners. So they always lack in other areas, like, giving affection. And they tend to forget that women are so emotional. If you give them like, if women are, when women get up, when women get emotional, they expect men to be affectionate to them. So boys lack in these areas. They don't know what to do. So when they get into these marriages, they don't perform. I'll call it that. They don't perform well. They expect to be spoon-fed all the time, and they continue to expect that same treatment when they get married. That's my point. And the other point is also a lot of people are straying away from being religious, yet religion is one of the main reasons of marriage. For example, I had the Imam mentioning something about marriage and Islam. I understand you have to be married. I mean, you have to be married before you have kids. So people feel they need to stay in marriage if they are not. People do not feel they need to stay in marriage if they are not religious. Those are my points.
Thank you very, very much, Lorraine. And actually, I'll read some text. Fazil, I'll just unmute you. I'm sure now the Sheikh and Council will have something to say. Fazil, just
Yes,
before you
thank you
come
very
in,
much.
I'll just read a few quick texts here before letting you
Okay.
in. Very interesting. The chat room is actually on fire. And just to remind you, you are on Come. Let's Talk with me, Kassim Kayira, and we are live on 75W Radio. We are live on YouTube and on Zoom via Umma Connected. We are streaming live on YouTube. Remember, you can watch back this program in case you missed it. Just go to Facebook or 75wradio.com and just look Come Let's Talk with Kassim Kayira, or just do the same on Umma Connected. Just look for Come Let's Talk with Kassim Kayira. Loads of text messages in the chat room. Actually, it's very, very interesting. I'll just read a couple. Saidi Katende says, Council, then it is the promotion of toxicity. I see mental health in comments, violence. These are issues the law needs to start revising. It looks like actually of the grounds that were used, these issues have not been addressed. Or maybe, Council, you might be able to tell us later on. Jojo, this is my best comment tonight. You say marriage is the only institution you celebrate and get your certificate before you get to know how much hard work is required. This is my best message tonight. And I just Sarah comes in to say, I think the law may have a problem of forced marriages, but not arranged marriages if the partners consent. Jenny again, that's very true. People just want to be seen in a gown and showing off, not knowing you are signing your life away by just a gown. Jackson is back. People think bombs only happen in Iraq, but there was that which happened behind the four walls in a home. Silent treatment can cause a tsunami. Trying to mind read the other, you might go mad. Now, some without a relationship, you feel depressed. So you seek happiness from marriage, meaning you are trying to use the other as your source of happiness. Mayanja Fazil, go ahead, please. I'm sure.
Yes. Yeah, thank you very much, Sheikh, and discussants, as well as the guests, Sheikh, forgotten the name, and the council. Now, I think there's a point that we are kind of missing in this conversation. Especially, I might be coming from a younger generation than most of the discussants, because what most people do not look into is the issue that divorce has gotten so easy these days because of technology, because of communication and things of that sort. And as the world keeps transforming and changing, we as a society have not, found mechanisms and ways to keep family units and societies as well as communities together. And so, as the world is changing at a very faster pace, it's affecting us even in our day-to-day lives. Now, for example, Sheikh Kayira, you're aware that today you might have your kid or my child having a phone at just the age of 9, or tablets and stuff like that. And we don't know what they're actually looking at. We don't know who they're even talking to. So at a very early age, most of our children, get influences, or, they are influenced by strangers on the internet. Now, these are the kids that we are raising to become fathers. They are the kids we are raising to become mothers. The other thing that I've also seen is the issue that someone who has grown up in Uganda, it's very hard for them to successfully or get married and have a long-lasting relationship with children who have grown up in the diaspora, that is, who have been born here. Children who have been born here will be drawn to kids who are born here because they have that connection. They have grown up watching Paw Patrol and those cartoons and stuff like that. Now, for me, who was grown up in Uganda, I've grown up digging and going to the Genda Kuluzi, Kusani, Kamere, and all that kind of stuff. So when those two people come together, these are two completely different people from different worlds. I believe that even if they have, the same level of iman or stuff like that, these two civilizations, I don't think that I know there are some that have worked together, but it is usually hard. And that is why I think that there's a very big challenge there, especially to you, our elders, to find means on how these challenges can be mitigated, especially issues to deal with technology. Because I have an example, for example, in the 1920s, right? Someone would die at the village and it would take almost a month for another village to know. Today is just a flip of a finger like this, and then everyone knows what is happening. People are, committing adultery in relationships just next to your bed there, and you don't know. Different influences have also affected the way we behave in bedrooms. So people have an idea of, how intimate relationships should be because of what they have seen on the internet, and these are actually influencing, the marriages, and they are, I think, destroying, especially young marriages in one way or the other. Lastly, I would also like to especially conversations like that. This we should also have examples of communities, especially the Indians. I don't know why. Maybe there is divorce in the Indian community, but when I look at most Indians, I mean, those guys, there is a way they do their family thing, and really, you see them getting all together, in one way or the other. How do they really do it? And I don't know if my points make sense, but I think that's what I had to say.
Your point makes sense, but I was going to challenge it, definitely, because a lot of what you don't know is what goes on inside those homes. Many are sort of living in bondage. Many, I think, quite a number might actually be living in bondage, because one, there is the issue of arranged marriage, I think, which was discussed in the chat room. It came up at a certain point. So because of the arranged marriages, these people know each other's families, and therefore you find by breaking up, it becomes almost taboo that our relationship with the other family is going to, get soured and so on. But there's also the issue that because the parents are sort of continuously existing, conflict resolution might be much easier than that. Beyond that, there are even those who continue, despite the existence of all these networks, to feel that they actually reached that point of wintermere, but unable to get themselves out of the kind of the ropes that they have tied themselves with. Yeah. Thank you very much, Mayanja. I'll just open up the conversation because I can see the time is running so fast. It actually runs so fast when conversations get interesting. But let's allow some more people now to come into the conversation. Shakir, I can see you've been active in the chat room. I'll bring you. You had your hand up, and then I ended up going away, and we got distracted. Shakir, go ahead, please. You about.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you today?
Alhamdulillah, I'm good. Yeah, I know that marriage is a commitment, but sometimes, like I say, divorce is the lesser of the two evils. The two evils being staying in a toxic marriage and divorce. So sometimes divorce is better than staying in the toxic marriage. Hence, that's why there's always room, a way out. Even in Islam, there's that room.
Absolutely.
Then we come to what could be the outcome of this to separation, which then leads to divorce. In my opinion, mental health wraps up a lot of things that lead to separation. The way, for example, partners' traumas before marriage. Sometimes you don't know what your partner has been through towards before marriage. Like they may not have been grown up in a family where a woman or a man is respected. Hence, this is going to happen in a marriage, and then happiness somehow is going to fade. Another one is family intrusion from different parties, either the woman's side or the man's side.
Husband's side, yeah.
Yeah. Then failure to support through emotional turmoils. For example, along in marriage, like we mean, not everybody has that ability to support their partner when they're going through that emotional downhill. For example, loss of parents,
That's a very, very challenging thing. And some partners don't know how to support their spouses. Hence, happiness is lost and leading into another person being depressed. And then when happiness fades in a marriage, everything is going down. You're affecting your children, you're affecting everybody around you. Also sometimes having a challenging child. We've seen people separate because they've had a special needs child, where one of the parties cannot handle really. They're like, now you've put all your care and support towards this one person. All this is mental health because they are not supported well. And not very many people agree to going to counseling because they feel like, oh, they have this ego. No, I won't go to counseling. Or they feel like, yeah. So all that. And there are also non-diagnosed needs. Have you ever thought about having a partner who has, I'll give you one that I know very well, autism. It's a very, very challenging need. So unless you really know how to handle these people, then you will go in with empathy, with compassion, which should all anyway happen in marriage. It doesn't always happen. They are challenging themselves. And then also understanding the way people deliver love. People deliver love differently. I was
touch on that, please. I'm interested in that.
I was speaking to one friend of mine. She put a post on Facebook. Actually, it was very interesting. She said, all this time, I didn't know that my husband really loved me because he never does the things that I see my friends' spouses do. He never brings home flowers. He never does many things. But I've noticed something that every morning during this snow season, he goes to my car and takes off the snow before I go in that car to go to work. Some people, it's the way people deliver love. Like we always say, oh, he doesn't love me anymore. He doesn't love me anymore. But maybe he does that one thing. Like I don't remember who said about the writing, how many good things your husband does, rather than just looking at the bad side.
That was
that's my submission.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Shakil. Well, you've actually summarized it pretty well. Some of these issues are issues that will come in once we go into the next conversation next week, inshallah, once we start entering into the process of the process, because some of these needs must be dealt and addressed very carefully and very clearly to make sure that we do not lose along the way. Because quite often what happens is some of these things are underlooked, and then as a result, they become a problem. I'll just allow two more people, and then I'll go to our experts. I'll go to Chef Tibuka and go to counsel as we wrap up tonight's conversation, which has been fantastic. Before I do that, quickly on some messages. Tomorrow, just to remind you, Bridging the Gap, that is with Baker at 7 p.m. Bridging the Gap will be looking at girls in gangs. Many girls are in gangs to protect their families. They are looking for a way out, but they cannot get out. We have girls who will be coming in to share their experiences. Make sure not to miss. That is 7 p.m. tomorrow here on 75 W Radio. And comment here from Amina Amba, the environments where we live, most African women learn the black bag system from the Westerners as a way of throwing a man out of the home when you start hating them. Jenny Wilshire again comes in. We should accept that people have come into these European countries and have forgotten their cultures. Also, intermarriages from other people from other African and European countries has or have wasted away our cultures. Lots of comments here. Shakir, I think you've just been on. You said these days there are lessons for understanding marriage in Islam before marriage, which is really very beneficial. Jackson had said, do people still do sakati? These girls who make noise on London buses, I just imagine them married. Spoon fed, that was I get Sarah laughing about it. Oh, it was Imam Kasozi actually saying being spoon fed. I think something was mentioned about men who have not been trained and then they come in and they spoon fed. That was a hope from Imam Kasozi. Fadi Sham says also mothers contribute a lot. How men behave. They are not allowed to cook or do chores at a young age. I think there was a comment, a question from Naima, which I wanted to put to the council. Yes, and it will be coming to the Sheikh as well. I think I mentioned one of the reasons that could lead to breakups in marriage. I think in Islam it is considered as a reason. Sheikh will correct me if I'm wrong. But council, it would be important to hear this from a legal perspective. Is impotence a factor that could contribute among the 5 grounds in secular law that would lead to breakup of a marriage? And then what does Islam or the law talk about incompatibility, mostly where there has been arranged marriages? Well, I think that is where we will try to wrap up with council and Sheikh, but I'll bring in 2 more people who haven't spoken. Matthew Pearson, your first time on this conversation. I think it would be unfair to let you go without hearing from you. We try to get you on your line dropped. Matthew, good evening.
Hello, sir.
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you very much for joining the conversation tonight.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I'm just thinking from a Christian perspective, marriage came in before sin entered the world. So obviously it was created perfect, but then Moses brought it in because of the hardness of the hearts of people. So it wasn't part of God's divine plan. Marriage is a covenant agreement supposed to be for life between a man, woman, and God. And I think obviously if you remove God from it, then it becomes very challenging. And I think, lack of communication is one of the big challenges we have. Sort of expectations. Also, I think
why the lack of communication? Why the lack of communication, Matthew? What happens to communication? Are we too,
well, I think well, let me give an example. It might be around behaviors. So let me give you an example. So sort of setting sort of guidelines about what's acceptable. So somebody might say, oh, I'm just chatting to one of my OGs, something like that. And, you go, okay, that's cool. But then you don't know if you're letting the fox into the hen house by not saying, well, actually, I'm not comfortable with that.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like being aware of cultural differences and actually aware of being like whether you're being naive and whether you should sort of shut things down. So just sort of guarding your heart, listen, from my perspective, listening to the Holy Spirit. And if you feel, I don't feel comfortable with that, sort of jumping on that before that situation develops into something it shouldn't be. Because, things that could go further will often start with just a shoulder to cry on, and like an emotional attachment that it's never intended to go further, but can go further and develop.
Thank you very, very much, Matthew. Short,
no problem.
Straight, and sweet. Thank you very much. Mariam Moore. Mariam, salam alaikum. Mariam, are you there? Yeah, just move quickly. Just try to wrap up. I've seen another person, Abdunur Ziwa. Abdunur, I think it's the first time I'm seeing you in this conversation. Happy to have you around. Abdunur, I'm sure you've been listening in. What's your takeout tonight? Why divorce? Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Where are you, Bon Abdunur? Are you in Kampala? Are you in UK?
Actually, I'm in Brixton.
You're in Brixton, all right. That's fine. Welcome to the conversation. You've been listening in. I'm sure you've had as well the conversation, heated conversation in the chat room. Your own take on why divorce?
Actually, divorce comes from lots of things, especially miscommunication. Miscommunication goes as far as then it causes the divorce, because if you miscommunicate with a wife, then you end up also not coming up to the same table. To me, I would think that the leading factor is the miscommunication, whereby a woman and a man has to be understanding each other. And understanding each other takes a long time. It's not all that easy that everybody who was raised up in different area would come to understand each other. So, but as time goes, you come to a stage where you do understand each other, and start from there to build up your relationship.
How comes though that at a time when you are supposed to have understood each other is the time you're breaking up? Could it be that you could have seen the red flags and you just didn't follow them or didn't follow your heart? Because Matthew just mentioned that there are things that start with the leaning on a shoulder to cry on. Before you know it, something develops into something else. Are there things that we will see that we will ignore then in the process?
Yeah, there are factors like financial circumstances, because in case a man has been doing well and has been stable in financially, then the moment you become less stable in finance, that's where most of the causes are starting.
So COVID might have led up following that sort of line of thinking. COVID could have led up to a lot of problems then.
Yeah, that's also building up a lot of divorce, because whereby a woman will be asking for something and you don't have it, and he might think that maybe you are sharing it with another woman. As a result, you end up misunderstanding each other.
Yes. Okay.
Well, the fact that you don't have money, whereby she needs something, or also women do share views with other women, and they come up to a conclusion where they say, oh, my man is giving me all this and this and this. So through that conversations, one picks up and say, oh, maybe my man doesn't give me all that support for some reasons. So it's a lot of things which are building up divorce. But in most cases, a woman and man should trust each other.
All right. Okay.
Thank
you very much.
The divorce.
Thank you very much, Abdul. And I'm only stopping you because we're very late on time. I'll just pick up two more people and then we will go to our experts to wrap up the night. Fadisham, thank you. Wa alaikum salam. Barakallahu fikum for joining the conversation. Fadisham, that's another new person to the conversation. Fadisham, can you unmute yourself, please? Wa alaikum salam. That won't be Fadisham from what I can see. Still not yet unmuted. Quick message here. You haven't met a slave queen where the whole marriage is on social media. The Facebook court is the judge and jury. I'll go to Jojo. Jojo, good evening. Hello, Jojo, are you there? Okay, if not, I'll just go to our experts. Sheikh Chibuka, please, Sheikh Sulaiman, if you can come back. There were questions that have been raised. Is impotence a factor among the 5 grounds? Well, that is particular law. That is a question that we also want to cancel, Francis. But to you as well, is impotence an issue? And then what does Islam or the law, secular law, talk about incompatibility and kufa? Mostly where there has been arranged marriages. Sheikh Chibuka, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much, Sheikh Kayira.
Yeah.
And thanks so much all for the previous speaker, and very beautiful contributions and very exciting ones. Now, regarding the issue of impotence, I think I alluded to that earlier in my earlier submissions. And, I think one can understand part of the purposes of marriage is not only to serve the institution of, from the Islamic perspectives, is demonstrating love, sharing love and compassion with your partner, but it has got some other fringe benefit that is core and essential to that. And, the consummation of marriage is at the heart of the institution of marriage. And the absence of that, you can see that probably it might not indulge in the one who cannot fulfill it into something of an extra relationship, but it leaves the other partner, of course, in a situation, in a limbo and in a dilemma. And sometimes where probably doesn't give enough time of patience, might end up being forced, she or he being forced into seeking, fulfillment of that need and that urge, in an extra, marital relationship. And therefore, if this is being put across as a reason for seeking, come to exit the relationship, I think it is understandable and there is nothing wrong at all with that. And a typical example of that is the example I cited earlier on from the source of guidance, where a woman came to the Prophet ﷺ and said to him that, look, I do not condemn my husband that he physically has got a problem. So the reason why I'm seeking out of this relationship is not because of a physical problem, right? It's a question of impotence. Had it been, of course, she knew that would constitute sufficient ground for the end of the relationship, but she had other reasons. So in Islam, definitely it is, because everyone does understand that it can be a source of trouble and it can hardly be accommodated where one of the parties seeks to fulfill sexual urges outside the legitimate relationship. So it can be ground, rather than someone doing it illegally, it will be better in case of, if it is the husband who is suffering from that a woman can seek elsewhere to opt out of the relationship so that she could have both, her life and also other, fringed benefit of that relationship fulfilled within a legal setting. Earlier on, I think one of the commentator talked about the role of the kisakate, and also before I come to the point of compatibility, but I think it's better I mention about this one as well, that how the kisakate have played a role, to get the girls to understand their role, and they mentioned about the kisakate teaching the child always be submissive, and then the kind of word that is used. And I think the question, I don't know, this, that meaning has actually constituted the ground for condemning religion as one that promotes, abuse of women, which has given rise to what we understand as a women liberation. Because liberation of women is not only about how they are treated in the marriage, but it goes beyond that in terms of disenfranchisement and equal opportunity, a place of work. These have got nothing to do with the institution of marriage. But if it is meant to make a woman feel that I am a slave, or I'm subservient to my husband, I think the Islamic meaning to that, the Islamic explanation of the relation between husband and wife, goes beyond the conventional meaning of subservience. Marriage is seen as an institution where the two parties are partners. In Islam, we all know when the Prophet ﷺ said that if both of you are shepherds, and each one will be questioned about their responsibility in discharging the duty within the framework of marriage. So I think Islam should not be understood as one that promotes that woman is going to be, subservient to her husband and obedience to her, bowing down to her, taking her instruction that has got no role at all. And sometimes the existence of that kind of mindset, if it's perpetuated by a husband, can actually be a potential reason for divorce, because one will feel that, well, I'm just in a sexual bondage, and it doesn't satisfy the purpose that I was looking at when I go into this marriage. So we really have to understand that. So it's not a question of obedience, but it's a question of responsibility. And this is why, one of the potential questions that we always, reflect on people who are looking into getting this marriage is, have you asked the right questions? And one of the most important questions is, for example, put the potential to the boys and girls, why this person, why this girl, and the girl, why this boy? And when you look into some of the answers they'll give you, they're all flimsy, temporary, very casual. They only satisfy today, tomorrow, even up to next month needs. But beyond that, it doesn't go anywhere. But if someone looks into the reason that goes beyond, that transcends this mundane world, then you've got something to anchor on, even where marriage happens to go through turbulences. So in Islam, one of the main reasons, the causes for divorce, is because we are people baited on something that is very temporary, very casual, and is not strong enough to survive the relationship during turbulence. Yeah. So finally, the issue of incompatibility. Now, I don't know if we had, Sheikh Kayira, do we have the definition of what incompatibility means?
Well, it's a general term. Again, it might be subjective. It might be as subjective as this.
Exactly.
Let's take it at face value as incompatibility.
Yeah,
Someone
I mean, taking it at
the
face
interview
value, me, my understanding of incompatibility is incompatibility in terms of what each party sees as the core reasons or the most important reason for getting into this relationship. In other words, what are the shared grounds? If there is no shared ground, then there is no incompatibility. It's no longer a question of a black man marrying a white woman, or an Arab marrying a Chinese, or a Chinese marrying a European. These used to be the issue. And of course, they constitute to a certain extent what we call incompatibility in terms of race, because you don't speak the same language, culture is not there. But there is some that can take those two people beyond that level. If there is no incompatibility in terms of the purpose and the reason why they get into marriage, then it's going to be very difficult. And these are the issues that have to be questioned. If there is no incompatibility in terms of honesty and integrity and trustworthiness, and the level, the potential, patience and perseverance in times of difficulty and adversity, then incompatibility is going to be a very serious issue. Lack of it, it becomes very difficult. Now,
I think the example that was used was the issue of arranged marriage, and Sheikh, probably you can summarize so that we can wrap up. Arranged marriage as an element of incompatibility.
I think arranged marriage is one issue that has been overwhelmingly misunderstood. Because what it appears to be understood, especially in the West, is that it entails the meaning of forced marriage, meaning the girl doesn't have a say in the kind of husband they are choosing. But these are two completely different worlds. Forced marriage is not acceptable at all in Islam. It doesn't matter whether the married person is young by a difference of 20 years. You cannot force a girl, yes, you cannot force a boy into marriage. Whereas arranged marriage, as we understand, where the two parties can come together and see whether there is a potential compatibility between the two parties, whether their son is a suitable will be a suitable, wife, husband to their daughter, and then they support them, prepare for them, and then, later on they can, with their consent, they can facilitate them to start the new, their marriage life. And I think there is nothing wrong with that. Finally, Sheikh Kassim, allow me to say this because I think it's very, very important that when we talked about the issue, someone mentioned about the issue of women being liberalized now, liberated now. And I think this word, it has the meaning. It sounds very good. When countries are liberated, that is, a good meaning.
Freedom. Yeah.
But sometimes when we use the word liberated in the context of marriage, I think if we mean by liberation, meaning regulation, regulating the institution of marriage, to a certain extent, yes, it needs to be regulated, especially where there are, potential abuse, overwhelming abuses, and the institution of the religious institution doesn't seem to help with the people. So there is nothing with regulation as long as it doesn't, it doesn't affront, the very institutions of the marriage. Part of this has actually brought about the potential suspicion from the day one when marriage was meant to be given the best takeoff for what is meant to be, a lasting relationship until death does them apart. The new phenomena of the prenuptials, right? You find that
that was mentioned, and I think we will go into next week's conversation. Yes, go with it.
So I will leave it to that, inshallah. Maybe we'll discuss.
No. You mentioned the prenuptials, please.
What I was going to say is that, where, the issues of money start to be discussed from the word go, it really creates a sense of suspicion and worry, and it actually eats away from what would have been the real, absolute, the creamy love and compassion in between the two. It becomes very difficult to enjoy that kind of marriage from the word go when you know that you have to be very careful about your money. This is not yours, and this is yours. It becomes very prescriptive. And if this is the meaning, for example, if this is part of what is now the whole understanding and interpretation of marriage from the legal perspective, as probably could be understood from the previous submissions, then it becomes very difficult. That prescription actually sets toxic grounds for what should have been, subhanallah, the best moment and the best beds of roses. Anyway,
thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sheikh Suleiman Tibuka. Council Francis, to you now. Last words You've heard about the issue of impotence being grounds for divorce, and then the issue of incompatibility, and then you can wrap up with your final parting words tonight on why divorce.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's very interesting discussion, actually. First of all, the issue of impotence is not legally a ground for divorce. So legally, I think this is where people need to understand what sort of marriage are they going to go to? What is the governing law? What are they going, where are you getting married? Are you getting married in a church, in a mosque, in a customary marriage? What is allowed and what is not allowed? You see what I mean? Is it, for instance, is it under common law, or is it under the civil law, like the French system, for instance, whereby, I mean, the systems are very different. Where are you getting married from? And what is the governing law which is going to constitute that? Because it's going to frustrate you when you're coming out. As much as I totally understand the feelings about how important sex is in marriage and everything, unfortunately, in law, we look at what does the law say? What is the legal test? Is it a tick or no? It has got to be either black or white. Is it under the 5 grounds? If it's not, it's not ground for divorce. So impotency, no. So it's taken as part of probably a healthy issue, which you have got to understand that, this, my husband or my wife is going through this situation. I just have to stay with them for the rest of their life. This has happened. We are together, okay. It's not happening anymore. There are so many sexless marriages at the moment, and you might not know about that, but there are millions. So people don't live because somebody is impotent, and the law will not allow you to divorce. If you put it on your petition for divorce that the ground is impotence, it's not going to be allowed. So basically it will be denied. Again, if we go on the issue of somebody mentioned about mental health and said, well, people should not stay in domestic violence relationship because, that's not a ground for divorce. When you speak to your lawyer, that falls under unreasonable behavior. So we're not, the law is not saying you should stay in a marriage whereby your woman is beating you up, your husband is tearing you apart, and so that goes in. You can't petition for divorce on the issue of domestic violence. So that is a ground which is allowed legally. So under unreasonable behavior, and again it will be looked at, is that unreasonable to beat up somebody? Of course it is unreasonable, and that is a ground which is allowed in law. So those who are saying we shouldn't stay there suffocated, they're being killed and all that kind of stuff, and the law allows it. No, the law doesn't allow it. It's unreasonable behavior. Therefore, that is a ground for divorce. And someone also talked about forced marriage, and I think the previous speaker talked about it explained it very well. There is a difference between forced marriage and arranged marriage. Forced marriage is illegal. It's not recognized, and if they say that actually that was forced, that that's not a valid marriage. But arranged marriages, like I said in my initial submissions, these happen. Our grandfathers used to do them, basically, and then they start negotiating and all that, and they do what they call okuchala, those first introductions. That's where the Baganda got all those words, tugenda kuchala, tugenze wasenga, that language, So it's not new. I know probably at the moment, girls for getting married now don't understand the reasoning behind all those words, or kwanjula. These are all things which were like preparations, families coming to meet each other. So those are, some of them are arranged marriages, but they are not illegal, and therefore coming out of an arranged marriage is not, you have to have a reason. So not that this was arranged, unless it was forced onto you, and there is unreasonable behavior, there is adultery, there is all those other grounds which are mentioned, you can't come out of it. So for me, if I can conclude again in terms of my submission, is that people before they get married, don't jump into marriages. And I think there is a pressure on our youngsters, like, oh, you finished school, or fumbira di beskale, wasa did that pressure. This is not something easy to go in. Somebody needs to go in as you're getting into a contract, when you're conscious, when you are aware, because you're getting into a relationship which is not a casual one, which are not going to simply come out.
But Council, our bodies are demanding, and therefore it might be that because I'm not allowed to have sex outside marriage from a faith perspective, I go into marriage. So because I'm banning, there's this urge, the internet, the social media is flagging, Instagram is killing us with all, inundating us with all these images, and you want to be free, and therefore you go into marriage.
I'm afraid, Sheikh, that is as same as saying, well, everybody is buying land. I'll also simply buy land without, because Sheikh, you've got about 15 plots of land. You have to research. However, the urge, whatever urge you have, you really need to go through it knowing, because there are going to be consequences. We don't want this for you to want to come out of your marriage and you feel like you can't get out of it, because obviously there is no adultery. Your wife is as perfect as anything. There is no bad behavior. You've not been deserted. There is no 2-year separation, and you're like, I want to come out of this marriage and I can't. When you go to court, things are going to be difficult, and then you say, why did I get married in the first place? So think before that. Yeah. And also in conclusion, I would like also people to think about in terms of mediation. There are all these support services which take place. I know many lawyers don't talk about mediation, but mediation is one way of resolving some of these things. Some of these issues you're talking about, incompatibility, behavior, and financial matters, and now COVID has come, people have got financial difficulties. When actually mediation comes in, or counseling, or elders, all these priests or sheikhs have got a role in terms of how society functions, and can actually prevent all these divorces, because when they come, actually, yes, you will get your divorce, but believe you me, there are consequences after that. It's not going to be, you'll come out with a bill, yep. I'll be more richer as a lawyer, and you'll be crying as a client.
Thank you very, very much, Council. And just to let you know, next week, inshallah, we continue with this conversation. We shall now just go into the depth of divorce. I can only thank you very, very much for having stayed longer. We're supposed to finish at 10 o'clock. We've gone 30 minutes more, simply because you made it interesting. If we talk, then we get talking. I thank you. I cannot thank you enough for sparing the time and keeping it into this program. Please come back again next week, inshallah. We shall actually go now into the details of divorce, and that's where the legalese will now be very important. Francis will be with us. We have another lawyer, Irene, also coming on board. We shall have 2 lawyers, and then we shall have a sheikh, and we shall have a priest now going through and delving into this particular situation. These are community conversations. This is our global community conversation, and I can only thank you very much for making the time. I'll just do a quick roll call, thanking everyone before I let you go. And thank you very much to Latif, Shakir, Sharifa, Twaha, Sarah, Salma, Said, Katende, iPhone, Rukia, Rayan, NK, Naima, Kayira, Muslim Community, the Netherlands. That is Sheikh Nasser Kaba. I think Musa Rugemwa, Matthew Pearson, first timer here. Matthew, thank you very much. Mariam Mo, Lorraine, Tuanuka's iPhone, Kamregia, Sheikh, Joy Mutesi, Mrakosi Chani, and Jenny Wilshire, Jackson Egesa, iPhone. Oh my God. Imam, Ajara, Galaxy A12, Fadisham, Charite forever. Buko, Sheikh Buko, thank you very much. You're quiet in there. Amina Amba, Boss Lady, Ida N, and then 75W Radio in the technical services. Thank you very much, Hasfa in the US, and Usama in the technical service on the Ummah Connected side. I can only say thank you very much. Hope to see you next week, inshallah. Thank you very much, and keep it watching. You can remember, you can actually watch this in case you missed it. Just go on to your YouTube channel, search for Ummah Connected. Just look for Come Let's Talk with Kassim Kayira or just do that on 75 Radio on Facebook, and you'll be able to watch some of our programs. Have a very good night and hope to see you next week, inshallah.